Hello everyone, it's Daniel from TechMindFactory and welcome to this next video from the series called IdentiSphere Explorer. In this video, we are going to talk about asynchronous authorization with CIBA and Auth0. So let's start. Before we move forward, I would like to say a big thank you to Annie Johnson and Milan Khan from Auth0 team. Without your support, it wouldn't be possible for me to create this video and implementation. Great, so let's start with standard approach to modern authorization implementation. So obviously there is a user is accessing specific application, and before even user can do anything in the application, user is asked to authenticate. So in this case, we have Auth0 identity provider. User is redirected to the login page. User provides credentials. And once user is successfully authenticated, user lands in the application. And inside the application, user can access specific features. So in the end, application is actually doing authorization check and access is granted or denied. So important thing is about this flow that we have real-time permission check here, like synchronous authorization. It means that there is a user in front of the computer accessing this specific application, those set of features, and then application is doing this real-time authorization check to make a decision where the user can access specific feature or can proceed with specific operation or not. And that's great. It works. It works really great for those types of applications like web applications, mobile applications, where we always have user in front of our application. However, this situation is a little bit different when it comes to AI agents. And in this whole era of AI agents and many discussions here, it's just not enough to have synchronous authorization implemented. So let's see this specific authorization flow with AI agents. So again, we have our user. User would like to talk to AI agent and would like to ask AI agent to proceed with specific operations. And obviously, as previously, AI agent needs to know the user identity. So that's why, again, we have our AI agent integrated with Auth0. Auth0 is responsible for authenticating users. So in this case, we have the login page. And once user is successfully authenticated, there is an AI agent ready to actually talk to the user. AI agent knows the user identity, and then user can ask AI agent to proceed with different kinds of operations. However, the thing is that those operations can be obviously synchronous, like user will instantly ask AI agent like, hey, proceed with the payment XYZ, and AI agent will ask for the permission for the authorization. User will approve this operation, and that's it. However, we all know that there will be many scenarios where AI agents would like to complete different operations asynchronously after some time. So let me put a few examples here. Let me start with the one with invoices. Try to imagine the situation where you ask your AI agent like, hey, basing on the data collected from all the invoices collected in this month, in the end of the month, please initiate payments. So it means that AI agent will not immediately proceed with payments. It will collect the data from different invoices, and in the end of the month, it should proceed with payment initiation. But before that, what should happen? AI agent should obviously ask the user for the permission, for authorization. So in this case, after some time, AI agent will ask the user for authorization. Hey, should I proceed with payment initiation for this amount, for this invoice? And then it's user's decision to either approve this operation or reject this operation. AI agent should not have such power potentially. And the same is like with another example, like with stock. Like we can ask our AI agent like, hey, monitor stock And if there is, some extra offer, buy something. And this will not happen, synchronously immediately. Like AI agent will observe the stock, will analyze it, and after some time will ask the user for final approval, for the final authorization. So that's why we need this asynchronous authorization in place, especially when it comes to AI agents. And this is where client-initiated backchannel authentication, or CIBA, can help. So what is CIBA actually? It's an OpenID standard for decoupled authentication and authorization too. It's very important, authentication and authorization, letting users authenticate on a separate device while the requesting device securely receives tokens without direct user input. So that's very important. Like we have this decoupled authentication and authorization. And as you can probably imagine, in the world of AI agents, like AI agents will be hosted somewhere and we will have some kind of interface to interact with them. But on the other side, there will be users with their phones and they would like to approve or reject those authentication and authorization requests. Okay, so to move forward, let's discuss some use cases here. So CIBA can be really helpful when it comes to decoupled devices. So when the user authenticates on a separate device, like phone, from the one requesting access, like smart TV. So let's say that we have some application on the smart TV, and actually we are asking user to confirm authentication on a separate device, like mobile device. Another example is no direct user input. So when the consumption device cannot easily collect credentials, like voice assistants, kiosks, this is also a perfect scenario where CIBA can help. Enhanced security. So to reduce phishing risks by avoiding credential entry on untrusted or shared devices. This is a very common scenario where there is one device and we would like to avoid users to provide credentials directly on this device. The better way is to ask user to actually authenticate, and user can use some secure authenticator app, approve the authentication request, and then user can continue with different kinds of operations on this target device. And also user convenience. So allowing seamless authentication without requiring the user to type credentials on inconvenient interfaces. Yes, so again, instead of making user to type credentials on not necessarily a convenient device, user can again approve authentication or authorization requests on a mobile device, for instance. Perfect. So now let's talk a little bit more about CIBA Flow. So here is the application. And again, in the context of this video, I will refer to AI agents. And I also prepared the one for the demo because I believe that CIBA will be extensively used in those scenarios with AI agents, actually. So there is an application, obviously, which provides this interface to communicate with AI agent. And now, actually, this specific application would like to request user authentication. So let's say that this is single page application and user would like to access anything. So in this case, this application is requesting user authentication using application's backend. Okay, that's very, very important. So that's different than a typical login authentication flow with OpenID Connect, where application is directly communicating with identity provider and is contacting authorization endpoint. So in this case, application through its backend is requesting user authentication. And then application backend is sending requests to BC-authorize endpoint on the identity provider side. In this case, Auth0. Okay? So when the BC authorize endpoint receives this request, obviously it will, Auth0 in this case, will send push notification to the user device. And then obviously user sees consent and user can either accept or reject this authentication or authorization request. And in this case, once a user confirms, then application can actually access user profile. And in this case, application will receive the token. An important thing is that until user confirms this specific operation, the backend will poll the token endpoint and use it after successful authentication. Okay, so there is this polling implemented, and backend application is checking with Auth0, like, hey, tell me whether user accepted or rejected this specific authentication or authorization request. And then once user approved the operation, from the token endpoint, application is receiving the token, like ID token and access token, and then application, or to be more specific, AI agent, can proceed with specific operation. Okay, great. So now let's talk about some important usage scenarios. So CIBA can be used for user authentication and user authorization, and that's very important. I know that the name is client-initiated backchannel authentication. However, we can use CIBA, a protocol and standard for user authentication and also user authorization. Perfect. So this diagram was provided by Auth0, and it explains authentication and authorization with CIBA in context of Auth0. So important thing is that obviously in this specific scenario, we have this decoupled authentication and authorization. Like, we have our mobile application integrated with Guardian SDK, Auth0 Guardian SDK, and we have some kind of the application. Yes. So as we can see, user interacts with the application. Again, application is sending requests to bc-authorize endpoint on Auth0 side. And basically, this application in a response will receive an authentication request ID, like unique identifier of this transaction. And then application is polling token endpoint to actually check whether user accepted or rejected the request. So Auth0 will send notification to the mobile application with Auth0 Guardian SDK integrated. And obviously, user will see the information about the operation and can consent, actually. And the thing is that to display information about consents, application will contact Auth0 consent API, this /reach-consents endpoint. So in this case, application can display this information to the user, like, hey, do you agree to authenticate, or do you agree to proceed with this payment initiation? And user can either accept or deny. And then obviously application will submit user authentication or authorization response to Auth0. And then obviously when application is pulling the token endpoint, at some point it will get the ID and access token to actually proceed with user identity verification and to proceed with some operation. So as you can see, it's decoupled here. And that's why it's also way more secure, and it can be really helpful in the context of AI agents, where actually agent can ask user like, hey, do you agree to proceed with this payment initiation operation? And user can use its own mobile phone to actually either accept or reject such request. Great. So now let's talk about some prerequisites to actually use CIBA with Auth0. So first of all, we need to integrate Guardian SDK provided by Auth0 into our mobile application. So in this case, we need to actually implement custom authenticator app with Auth0 Guardian SDK integrated. Additionally, we need to configure push notifications, because obviously our application would like to receive push notification sent by Auth0 and then be informed that, hey, somebody is requesting user authentication or authorization. And also, obviously, we need to enable client-initiated backchannel authentication grant type for our application in Auth0 tenant. Great. So now let's talk a little bit more about the solution architecture here. I want to make it super clear so you understand the process here. So there is a user. User is accessing web application, and this web application is obviously sending the request to BC authorized endpoint on Auth0 side. And as I mentioned, in this specific scenario, we need to implement push notifications. So this is the solution architecture that I created for the demo application that I will be presenting in this specific video. So as you can see, on Auth0 side, I configured push notifications with Firebase actually, because I will be using Android application for the demo purpose. So Auth0 is sending this push notification through Firebase notifications, and obviously my mobile application is receiving the notification. And obviously web application starts polling the token endpoint to check the user decision, and obviously user can either confirm or reject this authorization decision. And once there is like a decision made by the user, obviously this specific application will receive the access token and can access specific backend API. So in this solution architecture, I focus on the authorization implementation with CIBA. And this is really helpful in context of AI agents, because once the user accepts the authorization request, then this web application or AI agent will receive an access token and then can access specific backend APIs. Great. So now it's time to see it in practice. So let's see the demo. So here is my demo solution. Obviously, we will discuss some fragments of the source code, but before that, I think that it's good to see it in practice. So on the left side, you can see my Blazor web application that I created. And this web application is communication interface, so I can talk to my AI agent. This Blazor web application is integrated with Azure OpenAI service, and also it's secured with Auth0. On the right side, you can see my custom Android Authenticator app, which is integrated with Auth0 using Auth0 Guardian SDK. So now in this demo, we are going to see the scenario where I ask AI agent to initiate the payment for a specific invoice. So let's start. As we can see on the left side, here I have this web application. There is a tab called Talk to Agent. And now, if I will ask this agent to proceed with the invoice payment, probably it will not happen because I'm not authenticated, as we can see. So here I will type proceed with invoice 001 payment, okay? And I will ask this to my agent. And actually, as we can see, the response is, please authenticate first to proceed with payment of the invoice 001. So it means that actually AI agent needs to know my identity. So what I will do, I will click login button. And as you can see, I'm redirected to Auth0 login page. So this is the place where I have to authenticate. So I will do it right now. And obviously here, there is MFA implemented. So on the right side, I have my mobile application, my custom authenticator app, Android application. So I will sign in this application. And because of the fact that I was already authenticated in the browser on the device, I do not have to provide credentials again. As you can see, here is this greeting, hello Daniel Tester, and here are my enrollments. So actually this device is registered as trusted device for my user in Auth0. And I can use this device as authenticator. So here on the left side, I will click resend the code. And as we can see, here is my authentication request. So I can either deny or allow. So obviously I will click allow button. And now I'm successfully authenticated in my web application. Hello, Daniel Tester, as you can see. So now if I click talk to agent, and now I will try to ask agent to proceed with the payment, probably it should work. However, important thing is that, as you probably know, agent should not proceed with the payments without my confirmation. Agent should ask me like, hey, do you want me to proceed with this payment? Can you authorize this operation? So in this case, we are going to see that I will receive authorization request on my Android device. So now, if I type proceed with payment, proceed with invoice 001 payment like this, and I will click send, as we can see on the right side, I received this notification. Hey, do you want me to approve this payment for this card number, this recipient, and stuff like this? And obviously, important thing is that AI agent should wait for the confirmation. And this is what I wanted to show you, that if I will wait and like this request will expire, agent will respond that, hey, like there was some issue with authorization and I'm unable to proceed with the payment initiation for the invoice 001. Okay, so in this case, as we can see, if I do not approve this request, I will literally do nothing, then AI agent will not proceed. So I will deny this request, at least for now. And again, I will type proceed with invoice 001 payment. So I will type it again. I will click send button, but now I will approve this specific operation. And as we see on the left side, the payment for the invoice 001 has been successfully initiated. It means that once I approved, I authorized this operation, agent can proceed. Underneath the access token for the payment gateway API was issued from Auth0, and then this payment can be initiated. So that's how it works with Auth0 and CIBA. So it can be really helpful, especially when it comes to asynchronous authentication and authorization when building AI solutions and AI agents. So now let's look into the source code. So let's start with the Blazor application. So important fact is that I use semantic kernel SDK provided by Microsoft to build this AI agent here. So with semantic kernel, you can literally build AI agents, AI solutions. So it's very helpful, especially when you want to integrate your application with Azure OpenAI. So in this specific application, important fact is that under core project, under filters, I have this authorization filter. So in semantic kernel, we can create such filter to, for instance, filter out the data that will be returned to the users, but also the data that will be actually sent to LLM for processing. So as you can probably imagine, it can be really helpful when it comes to authorization implementation in AI agent. So as you can see, authorization filter class here is actually implementing iFunction invocation filter interface. An important fact is that if we ask AI agent to proceed with the invoice payment, here we can see that specific function will be called. And we can call this perform authorization check, I apologize, this one, we can call perform authorization for invoice payment async method. And this is very important. So actually, when we ask the agent to initiate the payment, to proceed with the payment for specific invoice, we want to, first of all, check if user is authenticated. So if agent knows the identity of the user. So here I have this authenticated user profile provider, which provides information about the currently authenticated user profile. And obviously, if the user profile is empty, we will ask the user to authenticate first. However, if this user is known to the AI agent, so underneath, obviously, we talk about the ID token with the user identity, then we can proceed with payment initiation. So in this case, we can utilize CIBA implementation in Auth0 to actually ask the user to authorize this payment initiation. So what's happening here? So first of all, we want to check if authorization request is empty. So if it's empty, it means that it's fresh authorization request, it's the new one. And here we call initiate authorization request async with the user ID from ID token using CIBA auth service instance. Okay, So this CIBA Auth service has actually two methods implemented. The one is responsible for sending authorization requests, so the user can receive this request in the Android application. And also underneath, obviously, there is a bc-authorize endpoint called on Auth0 side. So Auth0 then will send this push notification to the user. And on the other side, there is another method which will call the token endpoint to check whether user approved the operation or rejected or something else happened. So in this case, as you can see, once we initiate authorization request, we want to check the response. And in the response, we will have this auth request ID, this unique identifier for this transaction. And obviously, Auth0 will say how many seconds we should actually wait when it comes to this operation, because obviously we want to give some time to the user to approve this specific request. And as we can see, obviously, if there is something wrong, this is just a simple answer like agent will return the information like, hey, something went wrong with authorization request, please try again and contact us if it remains. So you can customize this message. But if everything is fine, then we call this second method, check user authorization status async. So in this case, we want to check whether user approved or rejected this specific authorization request. And obviously, if the request is approved, we want to proceed with the request using payment API. So in this case, Auth0 will return the access token that can be used with payment gateway API. But if like request is not approved, we want to check actually the status. So for instance, Auth0 will return authorization pending when if user still did not confirm the authorization request. So in this case, it will be authorization pending. So agent will know that, hey, I have to wait. User still have to decide what to do with this request. There can be also access denied. So in this case, user rejected the authorization request. So in this case, agent will return information like operation was not accepted by you. I cannot proceed with the transfer. And also, there can be authorization failed status, so something bad happened with this. But also, if we poll the token endpoint too often, Auth0 will return this slow down message like, hey, wait, you sent too many requests to the token endpoint. So that's basically it. And actually, with this implementation, AI agent will wait for the user approval or user decision. And again, as I mentioned before, once user approves the request, access token will be returned from Auth0. If request is rejected, obviously, agent will say like, hey, you didn't approve this authorization request. So in this case, I cannot proceed with payment initiation. So now let's see what's happening on the Android application source code side. So here is Android Studio, and you can see this custom MFA application and notification activity. Obviously, again, I will not be able to go through each line of the code, but I want to discuss some important fragments here. So first of all, this application is integrated with Auth0 using Auth0 Guardian SDK. It is required to successfully implement CIBA flow. So as you can see here, I have this object created called Guardian. And here, obviously, I'm using Guardian Builder from SDK, and I have to provide my tenant URL. So in this case, it's login.identisphere.com. So I'm using custom domain for my Auth0 tenant. And once I have Guardian, important thing is that I have to enroll this device. So actually, to make it simple, I just need to register this device in Auth0 as trusted device for the user. And for that, obviously, there is some cryptography used underneath and public key and private key because we need to securely register this device in Auth0. And once this device is enrolled in Auth0, as you can see here, those codes are displayed in my Authenticator app. like just in any other authenticator standard application. But also, I have this application integrated with Firebase notifications. So actually, for Auth0 to make it possible to send those push notifications, there is a Firebase messaging integration required. Obviously, you could use some different push notifications services. Important fact is that you need to implement this configuration on Auth0 side to make sure that this application can receive those push notifications. So in this case, I'm using Firebase messaging service. Perfect. So here is the thing, like once I receive the notification through Firebase, I want to get transaction linking ID from this notification, okay? Because I will need this actually to get information about the consent, about this specific request. So as we can see here, we have this get transaction linking ID. And then, as you can see, using Guardian SDK, I want to fetch the information about the consent for this notification and for this enrollment, as I mentioned before. And like on success here, I will get this reach consent response, and I want to update the UI accordingly. And if there will be something wrong, obviously I want to log this information here, but also if there is some exception from Guardian, we want to update UI accordingly again. So here I have this reach consent, and if I scroll down, I want to show you this here. So as you can see here in the update UI method, I do a check for this reach consent. So, it can be just like a standard authentication request. So in this case, there are no specific details about the transaction. But also, important fact is that it can be payment initiation requests. So in this case, I want to use specific fragment in Android to display the information about the payment. So here under fragments, under consent, I have this, let me expand this a little bit more. I have this consent payment initiation fragment, okay? And this is actually the place where I'm getting information about this specific authorization request, okay? So in this case, in my notification API here, as you can see, I'm calling get payment initiation consent fragment. And if I scroll down, you can see it here. And as you can see from reach consent, I'm extracting the binding message, the recipient name, the card number, the bank account, and amount. And then I can display this information using consent payment initiation fragment in Android. So that's why in the end, user sees this authorization request with payment details. So user can clearly see that, hey, there is payment initiation requested for this person, for this bank account, and for this card, let's say. So this is just an example, but obviously you can customize this information in this authorization request. Perfect. So now let's jump into Auth0 dashboard to understand what was configured there. So here is the Auth0 dashboard and my Auth0 tenant, and there are a couple of things I had to configure. So let's start with applications. When I open applications section here, I have my Smart Agent web application register here. And important fact is that when I scroll down to advanced settings here, and I will switch to grant types, you can see that I have client-initiated backchannel authentication, CIBA, enabled for this application. So we have to enable CIBA for this application to use this whole feature. Another thing is that under APIs, I have my Smart Agent payment API. So this is this fake payment API for which I want to actually receive an access token from Auth0 to proceed with the payment. So as we can see here, under settings, I have my details for the API. But important thing is that under permissions, when I scroll down here, I have authorization details type register, which is payment initiation. This is very important. So in this case, without registering this authorization details type, I will not be able to use CIBA flow. Because in this case, using authorization details like payment initiation, I want to provide this specific data set about the payment. So it's very important to add the authorization details type here, which is in my case, payment initiation. Okay, great. So moving forward here, under security, I have multi-factor authentication enabled for my tenant, as you can see. And important thing is that under MFA settings, I have this push notification using Auth0 Guardian enabled. And here is important thing. Instead of using Auth0 Guardian application, I'm using my own custom Android application, as you saw. So in this case, I have my custom application here, and under push notification service, I'm using a platform-specific service. So in this case, I actually use Firebase messaging service here to send those push notifications to Android. Okay, so that's very important. Here, as you can see, I need to upload FCM server credentials here to make sure that my Android application can successfully receive those notifications sent by Auth0 when user would like to proceed with payment initiation in this specific scenario. Okay, great. So that's it about the configuration actually. The last thing I want to mention is the fact that I have successfully implemented CIBA in the platform that I architected and built called IdentiSphere. If you would like to learn more about this platform, I encourage you to visit techmindfactory.com website and look under Advisory tab. Thank you so much for watching and see you in the next videos.